Hi there, welcome to flm204 here at Effects PhD. Continuing on our journey this week in getting files into the system, and we're going to look at Final Cut Pro XML and QuickTime support within Autodesk products. And again, this is continually evolving. They've made better and added more codecs, made changes better from release to release, and I think it'll continue to get better. But one of the things I want to talk about today is just basically some of the stuff you'll run into. So I'm going to kind of recreate some of the troubleshooting that we've done here at FX PhD and Hootenanny in hopes that it might help you folks do the same thing while you're wandering down this kind of winding, crazy path. So why don't we go ahead and head on over to the Mac and take a look at our Final Cut Pro sequence to start. So here we are in Final Cut Pro with a segment you may have seen before. I actually showed this as part of a course before, but we're going to dive into a little bit deeper with some troubleshooting ideas when working. So we got a lot of things. It's stuff we did at IBC. I've got some graphics I animated in After Effects. I've got voiceover, some other elements. We've got JPEGs that were provided to us also. So we got a lot of different elements to talk about this. And what, again, as I mentioned, what I want to do is kind of walk through troubleshooting on how to do this. So why don't we go ahead and just start up. I've got this DVC Pro HD sequence. We got some stuff from Angie. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just media manage this. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy the media references by duplicated items. Maybe you're not even going to want to copy it. Maybe you're just going to want to use your originals for working where you have everything in a folder. But what this will do is this will allow us to kind of consolidate everything. I've gotten a couple different locations, so we'll have it there using the same codecs that we use. So we'll talk about codec issues and so forth. We'll delete the unused media. We'll use handles. We'll duplicate them into a new project. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And we'll call this export. Do that, and we'll go ahead and copy all these files, and then export an XML sequence of the sequence, and then open this up into Flame and start talking about the issues that are going to arise for us. So we'll go ahead now and move on back over to Flame. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into the library, and we'll import an XML. And we've got FX Guide TV here. Here's our XML, and we want to link with video files and also link with audio files. And we'll go ahead and load that in. You can see we get a ton of stuff here in our source, and again, because of our media translation, what we'll do is you want to select everything on the left-hand side and then tap on the path column, and we will go here to our media directory and set the directory here. And you can see we find all the check marks. And what I'm going to do is we'll go ahead and start using soft import. And we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll go ahead and say import selected files, and the proxies will start to go. And we already see we've got one error message there. Movie sampling rate, yada yada. A couple error messages and so forth. It's going to happen as it quickly goes by, and you can't really see it there. Actually, you know what? One thing is, I haven't tried this, and this might be a good idea. So you want to be able to actually look at the old log, because the new features in the software. We'll wait until that's done, and we'll take a look at the log, and I'll start recording, because I think what's happening right now is the UI is kind of taking over the hotkeys. So we'll go ahead and let this go, and then take a look at the log and kind of see what happened. Now that that's done, we can go ahead and Control Alt F7 to get our log list, and you can kind of see some messages of what went wrong. You can see here error loading, transition raise, audio track 1 cannot be soft imported, sampling rate mismatch, transition open, sampling rate mismatch, some other things here as well. And then up here, another sampling rate mismatch. But I know there's more than that because we actually weren't able to, sorry, I'm just keeping the wrong buttons, import a lot of these. So if you actually, thankfully, go out into the shell, you can actually see some issues here. You can actually see all these error messages. So this will kind of give us a clue as to why we can't import them. But let's go ahead, and the way I debug this was actually going to just simply the import image here. finding our files and just tapping on them. And if you tap through them, you can actually see that the ones that can read come through okay. All these images, and then, most of them really come in fine. But then you get to these, and actually they end up, for some strange reason, being listed late. But you get I Show You, movie with variable frame rate, not working. I Show You Capture, that's just a screen capture, and the way it captures sometimes is to do variable frame rate. So we need to fix that. Lower third barcode, QuickTime shear undefined. Shear codec 3. I use that codec a lot when I'm working on the Mac because it's very compact. It's YUV, works well in Final Cut, but not so much here. SAMVO, error, no video in movie. Well, this is a movie clip, but it's an audio-only movie clip, and apparently Flame can't support that. Again, this one seems okay. This one seems okay. And so do these. These are RGBA movies. So again, what we're going to do now is head on back over to the Macintosh and talk about some of these issues and how to correct them. So back on the Mac, let's go ahead and take a look at some of those clips. If we take a look at this transition raise, we'll reveal that in the Finder, double click on it and get info, you can see that it's fine with Apple Animation, but the problem is it's 16-bit integer audio, and what we need to do is we need to use 24-bit integer audio for consistency. That works for us, and basically if you take a look at this, you can see here in the settings you can have various sample sizes here, and that would be set up to 24. So for some reason when I was doing my rendering, I must have gotten set to 16, so we basically need to re-export that with 24 to take care of the problem. Another issue we had was this lower third. Ooh, I love general error. This lower third here. I just want to reveal this in the Finder. I actually don't need to do anything in Final Cut right now. Take this, you can see it's the shear codec. And as I said, shear codec is fantastic if you're working in Final Cut. It's a YUV codec with an embedded alpha. Your sequence processing doesn't dumb down to RGB only, because when you get a mix of RGB and YUV in your timeline, that's what happens. But it does create problems for Flame. Not so great, so what we'll need to do is convert that file as well, or use it in a different format. The other one, SAMVO new, that was a track that was a movie file, it was a .mov file with audio only, and Flame didn't support that. And then if we take a look at, let's see, there's another one here. One of these at least. Shear RGBA. I guess that's probably it. That's all we have. So what we need to do is take a look at the codecs, the QuickTime formats that are supported. Now, again, you can use Sony XD-Cam HD and so forth, but again, we're just going to talk about kind of stuff that you might run into for the most part if you're working on Final Cut, or at least the work that I'm doing. It supports these codecs, uncompressed 8-bit and 10-bit. These are your standard ones, FFmpeg. You have DV25 PAL, DVC Pro 50. New in Extension 1 were DVC Pro HD and Animation RGB and RGBA. This actually came out in 2009. And then you have RGB and RGBA uncompressed. So what do you take from this? Well, we don't have to worry about this stuff we shot with Angie and the stuff with Jeff and I. That's DVC Pro HD. But what we want to do is I want to recompress these into, say, an 8-bit, uncompressed 10-bit, animation RGB or RGBA, a .wave or .aff, or if we're going to do a .move, we want to make sure our audio has 24-bit linear audio. I should add to this. So those are our concerns. But luckily, I've got some tools, and we've created some tools internally here to help us with that and prep elements for Flame. So let me go ahead and show you those. So let's take a really quick look at the files here. And you can see these are all our files in our media directory. And some of those need to be converted. And what I've done is I've created some droplets to convert those. These are automator workflows, actually. And basically, I'll show you what happens with them here in a second. But I got 3 of them. One to convert to 8-bit uncompressed, one 10-bit uncompressed, and one RGBA, which is actually animation. If we take a look at compressor, you can see I've got various settings here. I've got to convert to 10-bit, convert to 8-bit QuickTime, convert to RGBA QuickTime. Of course, those are in reference to these. If you take a look at them, all they do is they just basically convert to what they're saying. Audio passes through. I'm going to make sure I take care of that. There's no resize, no change in frame rate, no nothing. It's just basically doing a straight up conversion. In some cases RGB to YUV in compressor, but again, it's converting the files, bottom line. The best way to show this is actually to show how it works, I think. Now, you may be saying to yourself, now how the hell do I find all these files that I need to compress, right? You've got them mixed in here. It's really not very as obvious. You can go into each of them and do a Command I. That doesn't even work. You can do a info here like we did and say shear. But let's talk a little bit about Spotlight, which is really cool. So here we are. I'm in this media folder. Actually, you dive in, you can see all these files, just so you like here in Pathfinder. You need to use the Finder for this. It seems to work a little better. It's a little more efficient. But what you can do is you can do Find. If you pull down this menu, you can go here to Other, and Other is really pretty cool because it shows you all the search attributes that are available for you to search for. If you didn't know these were out here before, you'll probably be surprised at all this stuff. You can actually see things like, DPX frame ID, edge code count, edge code prefix, all these things that were installed for me, I believe with the glue tools possibly. But again, all this stuff you can look for, but what we're looking for right here is codecs, and you can see this is checked, so that's going to appear in the menu. So if you pull this down here, you've got codec. We want to say contains, and we do shear, and it finds all of them on our Mac. We'll just select here in flm204, and there are all of our files in that folder that have been compressed with shear. And so now all I do is I can go ahead and I'm just going to drop these on this Automator droplet, and it's going to run a shell script. You can see what happened immediately. First, it made a folder called Originals. So what it's doing is copying the first file that I dropped on into here for saving. It also created a converted directory, and that's where our converted file is going to show up. And so as you see those show up one by one. If we go to Batch Monitor, we might be able to catch this coming up here eventually. Those are my completed ones that have run over time. Actually, for some reason, when it's running in the command line, the batch monitor kind of flakes out a little bit on us. But again, you can see here, I'll go ahead and just leave this up. Maybe we'll see it. There you go. So you can see it came up, and you can see all the targets that are running on my multiprocessor. Again, works pretty well, and that's really quick. But you can see my converted, I've got a file by the same name right here, lower third Barco, and it basically just goes through each of them. Now, while that's going in the background, I'll go ahead and open this up and just explain really briefly a little bit about this Automator script and what it's doing. And here's what's happening. I'm actually saying get selected items, basically the items that I drop on it. And basically the first part is settings. Anything with a pound is a comment. So it's setting the settings file to, and there I have a growl notification that let me know the movies have been recompressed. All done. So here's the settings file. Of course, this name is the same name as our setting and compressor. So it's convert.setting, and it's stored in your library application support compressor folder. Cluster name, I'm using a Pooter Quick Cluster, which is a quick cluster I set up here on this local computer that uses 6 of the CPUs. And then it's just basically going through and doing some processing, making sure the file exists that got passed, which it should. It's getting the base directory, in other words, the enclosing folder, for lack of a better term. The name of the actual file, which is the just the individual file, and it's kind of a unique flag for me. And then getting a couple temporary directories, the originals directory that you saw that was created where it moved the original in there, and then the converted where it's going to put our converted files. Checks for these directories, makes them if they don't exist, moves the files, and then actually runs the compression. It saves it in the temp directory with a unique ID. And then once the compression's done, it moves it from that temp directory into the converted directory. That way anything that's in the converted directory has been completely finished by compressor. So again, that's basically what it is. And then in this version, I have a growl notification, which is cool. I don't know if you have growl, but just lets me know that the files have been done. So again, we've got these all converted here. So what I'll generally do is I'll take these files, move them back up one level, and now they're back where Flame will find them. And then what we can do is just go ahead and copy those over to Smoke in the same directory. And we'll go ahead and do that now and head on back into Flame. Okay, so we've got this all loaded in now, re-imported, and it's actually looking really good. This is a site that you'll love seeing, and you're doing battle with this a little bit. I shouldn't actually say that. You know, once you get the workflow down, and again, I've got a couple more tips here, it's actually not too bad as long as you know the procedures to follow. But the key is it's really particular. You go down here, we almost have relinkable on everything, but there are a couple. And we'll just sort these out, and you can see it's these 3 clips of Angie. Well, basically, if you turn on soft resize, it will now be relinkable because those aren't quite the same aspect ratio. Aspect ratio flags off or something in the file, but that makes everything relinkable. And now what we do is we have the shell of the XML file that we can go ahead and relink with the media. And oh my God, it worked. Relink 30 video sources and 22 audio sources, no missing media. And again, if you come up here, you can see this is the unlinked media clip, your XML import file. And then here is the recaptured version with some of the frames unrendered because we've got multiple layers. And it's looking pretty good, it looks like. Let's go ahead and load this onto the desktop. We'll go into the timeline and take a look at it. See what we've got. Well, all is not well. Some of it's looking pretty good. And of course, we'll need to do some mat containers and so forth. But we've got most of the footage in here. We've got our transitions, but obviously some of our graphics are kind of wonky. Well, what's going on here? Well, let's go back in the library and just take a look again at some of these. Let me just actually go ahead and load this out on the desktop. If you take a look at some of these clips here, you can see these are actually 1280 by 720, whereas our sequence was 960 by 720, which is normal for DVC Pro HD. And you can see here Angie's clips here as well were that way. But like Jeff drinking here, no surprise, 960 by 720. So what's happening is we're actually getting weirdness in the soft resize. So go in here into, take this clip back into the timeline here. And even if we come down, let's just go ahead and take a look at this clip, which is off. We see we've got a resize on it. It says center crop. I'll change this to fill. Well, it really doesn't do anything. We'll go ahead and change this to center crop, letterbox, crop edges, and now fill. And it's still not filling correctly. For some reason, it's just not filling out the destination correctly. So fit source, you can see we get that like that, but then we have to do some kind of weird positioning that's opposite. So anyway, bottom line is it's messed up. So what you want to do generally, and if you're working in Final Cut Pro, set it up as a 1280 by 720 square pixel project. You'll just have a lot better results when you're working. But that being said, we can correct this. And that is one of the cool things you can do. And again, it's learning about the unlinking and relinking that we do. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out so we're not confused. I'm going to take this clip, and again, you see it's 960 by 720. We can go into Tools, and on the Reformat, we can reformat it at a different resolution. So you can see here, we got some of our stuff from yesterday, but we'll 23976. What we'll do is we'll set this up to be 1280 by 720 with square pixels. So what we'll go ahead and do, and we'll just say Reformat. It's going to take no time, because it's just reformatting the clip. And now if we hover over it, we can see it's 1280 by 720. So now what we can do is go ahead and take this clip and go into recapture, and we get dropped directly into recapture. Now remember, that clip up in the top of the library, that was referencing, again, that original XML file. So you've got those old paths and everything. You can't really save over that. So what we can do is we'll just go ahead and select all these again, come here, set the directory, change these to soft import. We got everything, yes, soft resize, relink, found everything. We got everything out here, and hopefully it's going to be fine. Now some of it needs to be rendered a bit more than before, but we'll load this out into the desktop, and let's see how we're looking here. And now our graphics here are looking great. And you know what? I'm on the flame. It's all about the graphics. Let's see how the rest of this stuff looks. Well, Angie looks good here. And again, we're playing back on real time off the system drive. This is DVC Pro HD footage, so it's fine. So that's all working well. Jeff and I looking good here. And so most part good, but we do have a couple areas that are wrong, and you just basically need to go into these and switch them from center crop to fill, and it will snap back. It's a bug. I thought, you remember, we have this preference here that we can set this to fill. No, that doesn't seem to have an impact on things. So again, I'm working with the Autodesk about this. It's actually not that big a deal to go in. Well, it would be if you have a really long project, but again, that's why you want to do these tests to see, make sure everything's going okay and working for you. So you can just go ahead, again, you can do multiple scenes if you wanted to. But again, that's a quick way of getting this back. And again, you can see our clip is actually bad here again. So it's a bit random. Probably look at the XML file and kind of figure out what's going on. But again, generally when I'm working, there's that final caveat. I'm going to work with square pixel aspect ratio. So last thing I want to take a look at today is moving files in a different way, and it's using a cool little application, and you guys may have seen this before. It's called Tether, and it's from instinctualsoftware.com. It's really cool. It's a little bit pricey, but if you're doing a lot of this stuff, it really does make it easy. And you know, I think if you're spending $100,000 on something, you kind of wish this was built in. But again, this is the kind of functionality. If you do it a lot, you'll see that it's really quite cool. So Tether is about getting stuff in. Shrink is about getting stuff out. And really quite cool. So let's just take a look at what this does for us. Go ahead and switch over here to Tether. And you can browse your file system. So we've got all our stuff set out here. You can actually take a look at the various directories and open them up. And you get QuickTime proxies and so forth that you can scrub through and play and so forth. But what's really cool about it is this idea of being able to transfer over QuickTime files directly from the UI onto your frame store. And especially, what's especially interesting is stuff like this lower third barcode, which is a shear codec. And what you can do is actually take this and just drag it directly here. Let's say drag it into our default directory, and we'll start transferring it. So you don't have to worry about whether it's QuickTime compatible or whatever. This stuff kind of happens transparently for you in the background. So quite a cool little system that they've got set up. And again, any QuickTime format that's supported on the Macintosh is supported on this application. And it's a Leopard application, only 10.5. But where this really gets interesting for us, and those of you who do Final Cut a ton may find this interesting, is that we can actually just simply take this XML file. This is the XML file, the same one we imported, drag and drop it. And what happens is it starts transferring everything, every bit of media. Now, I haven't done any conversion. I haven't done any of that stuff. And so it just transfers it automatically and gets it on the Flame system. And then we can relink it with the XML. Now, I've intentionally got some problems here with this XML. You will too in the XML that you'll get with this class, so you can see that. And we'll talk through it. But let's go ahead and let this stuff transfer and go over and take a look at this in Flame. Okay, so we've got all our footage loaded in here, loaded correctly. And let's go ahead and import our XML, because what we need to do now is link our footage. So go ahead and import, and we'll just do that. We'll say link with audio files and load. And we're just going to exit recapture. Now what we want to do is take this clip, move it up there. And so now what we can do is say select it under Tools, and we're going to go Unlink, Relink, and what we're going to relink is, you try all these. We'll go ahead and say Relink from Reel, and it relinks 6 video sources and 5 audio sources in one clip. 6 video sources and 9 still missing. Urgh. Okay, so here's our clip, and the best way of actually figuring out what you're missing in your clip is to go ahead and expand and show edits. And then you can start to get a feel kind of what's working here. So transition rays worked. Basically, it looks like all my graphics worked correctly. The audio worked correctly. And so forth. So that seems to be working, but our missing media seems to be the stuff that's related to Angie's footage and Jeff and I on camera. So that's kind of a good way to see if what's going on. So let's go ahead and do this, and I'm going to have this selected. And what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead here and switch to list view and see if we can kind of figure this out. And if you take a look here, we have all this footage that actually says import here. The XML import gets defined automatically, but it looks like that our real names are incorrect here. We have no name here, and then up here we don't have, it says no name with no _1. So we can do, let's go ahead and just take one example here, and let's go ahead and click on that and hit tape. and modify the tape to say _1. So now we have the same tape name here matching our source material, and then this is the one that's actually, if we'll go back here to proxies, this is actually part of our soft edited clip. So let's go ahead and try and relink from reel again. Of course, it does a nice job of collapsing it back. Show edits, and sure enough, that's what happens. So you can see that the reel name was the issue there. Just another thing to be on the lookout for when you're relinking footage. Let's go ahead and head back over to the Mac really quickly and just show how you can take a look at that in Final Cut Pro to make sure your XML is set up correctly for you. It's really generally a good thing to do is make sure your reels are all together. So let's go ahead and head back to the Mac for the last time and take a look at that. So an easy way of taking a look at this is to come in here to your master clips, and we'll widen this out, and you can just see you've got a ton of metadata here that you can work with. And so what we can do here is we can actually just come in here and modify this clip, and so we'll just call it no name. We'll modify the file on disk, that's fine. And then if we do a multi-select now, we can actually right click on it and select that. And then for our other clips that are movies, what we'll want to do is go ahead here, and we'll just call this import. And then if we command select the rest of these, oh darn it, we'll do import here. And it says the WAV file will have import, but I think that doesn't stick. So anyway, that's saved. And then what we can do is then when you export the XML this time for the sequence, export XML, it will have the correct reel names, and that's how you get rid of that problem. So again, reel names are, again, one of those gotchas that you need to be out looking for when you're doing this type of thing and relinking media. Those can influence whether or not it gets relinked or not. So let's take a look at recapping these gotcha and tips that I want you to walk away with from this class. First of all, pay attention to resolution and aspect ratio. These can be really critical in whether it can find files with these resize bugs that we found and so forth. So definitely pay attention to that, as well as bit depth. Frame rate, that's a killer for you if your frame rate metadata is wrong, especially if you have this. Sometimes in movies you have a hidden variable frame rate in QuickTime movies. This can especially happen with animation codec. So if you do run into that, you don't want to re-render that in the QuickTime player. That would be bad. You can set a frame rate, but it really basically ignores it. What you need to do is set a fixed rate in compressor. And again, the scripts that I'm giving you, the settings I'm giving you, even though I showed them in the class with a no frame rate, I actually fix the frame rate in the scripts I'm sending out to you guys. So that's actually a good way to confirm that you've got everything set up correctly. Debugging, you're going to run into problems. I mean, again, I've walked you through this. The key is to avoid these problems as much as possible. You're going to run into situations where it can't find the files. So check out the UI log, Alt-Shift-7. That'll give you some hints into something going wrong, say in an XML import. Use the Linux shell as well. That can actually be a little bit more verbose, but then to really be sure, just go into the import module and test your QuickTime movies that you think are bad, and you'll get a really clear display for you of what's going wrong, why things aren't working, whether it's the audio sampling rate, a codec not supported, variable frame rate. You get a very nice, clear, concise view of that in import module to help you with your debug. In general, if you can, use the Media Manager to consolidate. That's going to help you a lot. Disk space is cheap nowadays, so it's maybe a good thing to do, and also kind of, as we saw a couple weeks ago, actually can help you in converting files. But if you don't do that, make sure your files are organized within a single project folder. You don't want to be grabbing a bunch of files from different places and so forth. There's some tricks system-wise. If you're going to use shared storage, you can make things easier using the wiretap database. But again, generally, when you're starting out with this, try and concern yourself with just keeping stuff in a single folder and organize that way to collect them. Standardize your media folders in your facility. Here we have definite ways in which we keep folders, where we keep them, and so forth, so that we know they're always accessible. You'll be a lot happier in the end if you do that. Also, use standard FS, as we talked about, for your formatting so that people can easily transfer files directly to your fast array, or use a fast SAN to allow soft import and easy access. If the Mac users are using a fast SAN and you can access that too, that's fantastic if you can access that. So that'll work out really well. And finally, you just want to try and standardize your codecs as much as possible when you're working. Just know which ones work. You know which ones work in Flame and Smoke. They're going to be adding more codec support and more varieties of codec support in the future. Again, just keep that in your arsenal. Know what works and what doesn't. And finally, for mix aspect ratio, as we saw, DVC Pro HD, you could edit 960 by 720. Really recommend you go ahead and start editing in Square Pixel and Final Cut. It actually works fine if you set up a ProRes sequence. Again, we want to go ahead and work at 1280 by 720. There are enough bugs with the resize algorithms as it is. Why don't you just do it this way, and I think you'll be better for it. So again, I hope this has helped you in taking a look at the XML workflow, giving you insight into debugging and troubleshooting. Again, I think especially make yourself valuable, I guess. I mean, it's really good if you can actually know how to debug these things and get a workflow working, because the reality is you're going to have people who come to you with Final Cut Pro and want to work with you. And you're going to have to jump through some hoops, but it can be done successfully, and I hope this has given you some insight into doing so. Well, that's it for this week. As always, drop by the forums and post any questions that you might have, any follow-ups. And until next week, thanks for being part of FX PhD. See ya.